You mentioned EQ and emotional intelligence, and that's kind of one of the things that you hear a lot about when it comes to leaders. How would you define EQ, and how important is that to being a good manager, good boss, good leader?
Yeah. I'm gonna turn the tables on you.
Okay.
How would you define it? What do you know about EQ, if anything? And it's okay if the answer is not much.
Well, let's see. If I had to think about like what EQ is, I would say it's probably like the ability to read a room. It's the ability to communicate on the level of the person you're communicating to. So you're not communicating at the way you want to be talked to, but more about how they want to be talked to. It's empathy. It's seeing people for who they are. It's sharing, the appropriate amount of details when needed, and understanding who if you're communicating to an executive, you have a different level of detail than if you're communicating to an individual contributor, and how to handle that.
Bravo. That's a pretty good answer.
That's about the best I can do. All right, your turn.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, you got a lot of the things, you hit it on the head with a lot of those things. So, yeah, I mean, most of us are familiar with IQ, right,
Mhm,
which is intelligence quotient. Most of us haven't had our IQ actually tested, but most of us know what IQ means.
mhm,
And the interesting thing about IQ is that it pretty much stops climbing at about the age of maturity, about age 18.
mhm,
If you ever did have your IQ tested, it won't really change for the rest of your adulthood. EQ, which is emotional quotient, of course, does and can grow and change over time. And so the interesting thing is wherever your EQ is right now, it's not set in stone. And so with intention and with effort, you can increase your EQ. And EQ is one of the most reliable predictors of success in leadership. EQ is one of the most reliable predictors of success. It is highly positively correlated with success in a role.
hmm. So, how do you go about assessing your current EQ, and then in turn growing it so you become more successful
Yeah.
in leadership?
Yeah, great question. Well, there's several different, assessments, so tests. I mean, an assessment is just a test, right? It's typically an online test with a few clicks here and there for, 10 or 15 minutes online, and there are several different tests for that, and we call them psychometric tests. And of course, they have to be, validated and statistically valid and culturally appropriate, across cultures and that sort of thing. The test that I use in my firm is called the EQI 2.0. And it's a test that it's a self-assessment, about 15 minutes online, and it runs through 5 different aspects of EQ. And then we unpack that into 15 different subscales. So each of the 5 aspects has 3 subscales underneath it, which equates to 15 things. So you got a lot of them on the head. I'll go through what those 5 are just for the benefit of our listeners if they're interested. But one of them is self-perception. It's really kind of internal, right? How do you perceive yourself? And the subscales that go with that are self-regard, which is essentially self-esteem. How do you regard yourself? Another one is self-actualization. How oriented are you? The phrase self-actualization is most widely known with Abraham Maslow's pyramid of hierarchy of needs. The tippy top of that pyramid is self-actualization, which just means being the best John you can be. Just being the most achievement oriented, the best version of John that you can be. And then the last one in self perception is emotional self awareness. How aware are you of your own emotional data? And then another one of the 5, the second of the 5 is self expression. So
Mhm.
how you express yourself to others. So that's when you said, reading the room, speaking to executives differently than you might speak to your direct reports, modulating yourself. All that falls under sort of self expression. How do we express ourselves to others? How do we express our own emotions? When I'm frustrated, how do I express it? When I'm pleased, how do I express it? Another piece of that is assertiveness. Am I able to be assertive without aggressiveness? Am I able to be assertive and assert my points of view and my own emotional data without it being off putting to others? And another one is independence. How independent am I, not as a worker, not as, do I like to work in teams or by myself, but independence in terms of emotional. Um, can I count on myself to, or do I really depend on others to tell me that I'm competent, that I'm
Yeah.
good, that I'm good enough, or do I know that independently? And then the third piece of the 5-piece puzzle is interpersonal. What does that mean for interpersonal relationships? Are you empathetic? to others? Do you sort of see the greater good, or are you all out for number one, all out for you, all out for just your team? Or do you see what the other teams around you need? Do you see what the larger enterprise needs? So that's kind of the interpersonal realm. 4 out of 5 is decision making, and that encompasses a couple of things. How quickly and easily can you solve problems when there is emotional data, when there is the emotions of other people or your own emotions? How quickly and easily can you solve problems? And then another piece of that decision making is reality testing. Are you living on this earth, or are you off in la la land? Are you the kind of leader who says, "We can achieve it, team, we can do it." And they're saying, "Oh my gosh, he has no idea the amount of effort that it would take
Mhm.
thing off." Or are you the kind of leader who says, "We can never pull this off. We would need 15 more headcount to do this." And meanwhile, your team is like, "Well, let us have a chance. Like, we think we could do this." Right. So, are you living in reality, or do you need to be a little grounded by others? And then impulse control. How does that factor into your decision making? Can you bite your tongue when you need to? Can you delay gratification with some impulse control? So that's number 4 out of 5. The fifth one is stress management. How do you handle stress? Do you have coping mechanisms? And are they healthy coping mechanisms, right? So all of us have them. Is it working for you? Do your coping mechanisms make things better or worse? Um, what level of flexibility do you have? How adaptable can you be when things change on the fly? And what is your level of optimism? Are you a glass half full or a glass half empty kind of a person? That all factors into stress management. So those are the 5 pieces of emotional intelligence as created in this particular assessment. The assessment was not created by me. It's by Jamin Nehru and Baran from several decades ago. And it is the most well-used and most renowned emotional intelligence assessment out there. And what's interesting about EQ is that the higher our EQ is, the happier we are. So
Really?
there's one scale in the assessment where when I debrief people's reports on this and when we talk about it together, there's actually a measurement of your happiness that comes out of this, your overall well-being.
I can definitely see that because I find that when you focus more on others, focus more on understanding things from a larger perspective instead of like the weeds, and whenever you focus on ways to cope healthily with stress, like whether it be physical activity, taking a walk, something that seems to be more on the health side, it does improve happiness. It increases your dopamine, your serotonin. You become a more pleasant person to be around, and I think that starts a almost like a snowball effect where you just grow over time.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because when I'm speaking with my coaching clients about some of this EQ, we always identify a couple of pieces, a couple of these 15 subscales that I just went through. We always identify a couple of them that would be most helpful for the person to improve upon,
Mhm.
work to increase. But what's interesting is that when we work on just those 2 or 3, it's like a rising tide raises all ships. All of a sudden, all of the other subscales get a little bit higher. The tide rises with them as well. So when we increase a little bit of stress tolerance, all of a sudden our impulse control gets better as well. And then all of a sudden our optimism increases as well. So it's interesting. It's really life-changing to work on EQ. And it really affects people in the workplace and outside of the workplace. Inevitably, the clients that I work with, it starts off as a very professional goal as to why they're wanting to increase their EQ. But everyone ends up saying to me, "This has increased my home life. This has made me a better sibling, a better parent." So it's really, the rising tide does lift all.
Yeah, I agree 100%. When I think back to like different things that I've done to try to improve different aspects of leadership or emotional intelligence, even I can go back to a long time ago. We took my wife and I took a parenting we were in a small group and we did like a parenting small group class, and it was about I forget the name of it now, but part of it was just how to communicate better to your children, how to be more empathetic with them, and things like that. And I was able to, I quickly saw like, man, some of these things I'm doing, my 2-year-old work when I'm at work too, with my employees. So I started like using crossing over and using things back and forth, and so like improving a small area of home life, translates over to how you communicate and improve things at work. And the same thing is true, like, with empathy. I struggled with empathy for many, many years, just not being able to relate to people, like, doing a one-on-one. I felt like I just need to tell them all this stuff and be done with it, and move on to the next thing. I didn't, like, put myself into their shoes and try to see how they would receive what I was saying. And when I took time to intentionally try to say, how would they receive what I'm about to tell them? I have, a poor performance review. How am I going to give this poor performance review? What kind of, drive do they have coming into work? What is their family life like? And what's going on in their personal life? And try to, shape my message to kind of fit their current place instead of just spitting it out there. I found that they received it better, they got better, and then I seemed to care more about them, and that helped me as a person as well. And it kind of, again, like you're saying, it kind of raised all the ships.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating work, and it really does help people's overall well-being and happiness. Because work is a stressful thing. We want to be able to enjoy what we do and enjoy our work, and a lot of times we do, and then some days we don't. And the higher our EQ is and the more resilient, sometimes we hear people say, like, you need to be an adaptable leader, you need to be a resilient leader, you need to roll with the punches of change. Well, how do you do all that? And the answer is by having a higher EQ. So, we do have to put sort of intentional and deliberate effort into these things, and I have tools and techniques that I work with my clients on, to increase some of these things. But first, we have to get a bit of a baseline assessment and sort of see what are we working with here, and where do you really, want to, improve different aspects of your leadership.